My name is Leah Townsend, and I turned 30 for sitting at my mother's dining room table. The candles on the cake weren't even lit yet when my mom leaned toward my dad and whispered, just loud enough for me to catch it, "Since everyone's here, have your son changed the locks at her apartment? Her apartment, mine, the one I bought with my own money? The one my 7-year-old son sleeps in. My dad nodded without looking up from his plate. My brother Carl set down his fork, muttered something about a job call, and walked out with his keyring already in his hand. Around us, the family kept passing the potatoes. My aunt laughed at a joke. My cousins talked about vacation. I smiled. I took a bite of part roast. I said thank you when someone complimented my dress. 1 hour later, Carl came back through that same front door with a face the color of hospital sheets. He leaned down to my mother's ear and whispered, "Mum." Then he never finished the sentence. What nobody at that table knew was that I already understood exactly what was waiting for him in my parking lot, because I had spent 6 weeks quietly building it. Ever since a declined debit card at a CVS started me pulling a thread that ended inside a manila folder in my mother's china hutch and showed me what my parents had been doing to me for 12 years, if you're new here. This is the kind of story we tell, women who stayed quiet for years finally explaining exactly how they walked away. If family, betrayal, and hard-won boundaries speak to you, subscribe and tell me in the comments how long you kept your suspicion in your chest before you finally checked the paperwork. Let me take you back 6 weeks. 6 weeks before that dinner. My life was small and good and mine. I worked nights in the ICU at St. Camillus Hospital in Dayton. 12-hour shifts surrounded by beeping machines taught me how to stay calm while everything screams at once. After each stretch, I drove home to my condo in Maple Crossing, 15 minutes from the house I grew up in. I bought that condo in 2021. I can still tell you what it felt like to turn that key the first time. 29 years old. And it was the first door that had ever been only mine. My son Noah was 7 that summer. Long legs, endless questions. Learning to ride his bike in the parking lot, while my neighbor, Walt, yelled advice from his porch. Walt is 68. A retired sheriff's deputy with a slow porch swing, and an old beagle named Biscuit who supervises the entire complex. On Tuesdays, I still drove across town to my parents' house because Tuesday dinner has been on my mother's calendar since I was 16. And everything on my mother's calendar happens whether you want it to or not. That year, she called me twice about my birthday. "We're doing it here, honey. Family only," she said, her voice softer than I'd heard it in years. I remember standing at my kitchen counter, phone tucked to my shoulder, frowning at the wall. My mother has planned every holiday our family has ever had. She had not thrown me a birthday dinner since I was 12. I told myself people mellow. I told myself 61 does that to a woman. Then I rinsed the dishes, checked Noah's homework, and folded the thought away like an old shirt you know you'll never wear again. 2 days later, a pharmacy card reader unfolded it for me. You should know what my job was in the Townsend family. Because it wasn't daughter, I was the fixer. The responsible one. The good kid. At 16, I was the one reading the water bill at the kitchen table because my dad's eyes got too tired. At 19, I did my parents' taxes for the first time, and every spring after that, I put my dad's blood pressure meds into a little day of the week box when the furnace broke, when the insurance lapsed, when Carl's landlord threatened eviction. My phone rang. My mother had a phrase for it. Delivered like a blessing. That's what family does. Looking back, I can count maybe 3 times in my life she said those words without a favor attached. Here's the part I'm still embarrassed to say out loud. I handled everyone else's paperwork except my own. When I turned 18, my dad set up a grey file box in his den and told me he'd keep my important documents safe. Birth certificate, social security card, the savings bond from Grandma Margaret. It felt like being taken care of. I was a scholarship kid, working prep cook shifts and clinicals through nursing school. I liked believing someone was minding the deep stuff so I could mind the double shifts. I paid my rent, later my mortgage through my credit union, always on time. I never once pulled my own credit report. I know how that sounds coming from a woman who reads lab values for a living. But you don't audit the people who taught you to ride a bike. You just keep showing up on Tuesdays, passing the potatoes, doing their taxes. It took me 16 years to look in that grey file for something besides my birth certificate. It Took one declined debit card to start. It happened at the CVS on Dorothy Lane on a Thursday afternoon. Noah had an ear infection and a fever, and I had his antibiotics in one hand and my debit card in the other. The reader flashed. Declined. I ran it again. Declined. I pulled out my backup credit card, emergency only. The screen blinked. Suspicious activity. Call issuer. There was a line behind me. A teenager with energy drinks. An older woman with a cane. All of them politely staring at the gum display while my face burned. I paid with the crumpled 20s at the bottom of my purse. Got Noah's medicine. Buckled him into his booster seat and then sat in the driver's seat of my car doing the only thing I see you nurses know how to do when the alarm starts screaming. Slow breath. Look at the numbers. That night, after Noah was asleep, I signed up for a free credit monitoring app I had spent years telling myself I didn't need. It loaded my file. I sat at my kitchen table reading. My own name like it belonged to a stranger. There was a Visa card. On my report opened in 2022, I have never applied for a Visa card in my life. Balance $4,800. Status 60 days past due. One delinquent. Account had yanked my score off a cliff. That's why a nurse with a spotless payment history got humiliated over a $14 prescription. My hands were steady. I want that on the record. 12 years in the IC, you will do that for you. I clicked into the account details. Expecting some drop address in Florida or a random P.O. box, the billing address on the account was a house on Kettering Avenue in Dayton. A house I knew better than my own condo, the house I grew up in. Friday morning, I called the bank that issued the mystery visa, sat through 20 minutes of hold music and told the fraud department this account was not mine. I put a 90-day fraud alert on my file. I asked them to mail me copies of the application and statements. Near the end of the call, the woman read me the contact information on file. The phone number wasn't mine. It was a landline. I could have recited it in my sleep. My parents' kitchen phone number, unchanged since 1998. I thanked her in my calm nurse voice, hung up, and stared at my reflection in the black microwave door. A memory surfaced. When I was 27, a few months after Noah was born, I got a letter about a credit inquiry I didn't recognize. I remember driving to my parents' house with the letter, putting it on their table. My dad chuckled, disappeared into his den, and came back with a bank letter on crisp paper, an apology about a clerical error that had been resolved. My mom had patted my hand. Bank error, sweetheart. Your father already handled it. You have a newborn. Go worrying about him. The fraud alert I'd put on my file back then expired 90 days later like they do. I remembered thinking the paper looked off, the logo a hair too blue, the language a little too vague. Then the baby cried, and I let it go, sitting in my kitchen 7 years later. I finally finished the thought I'd buried. Saturday morning. What was fixing the latch on the fence gate the HOA had been ignoring since spring? Because Walt fixes things the way other men watch football. Biscuit lay in the grass supervising. He told me a story about a forgery case he worked in '89. A man's own sister had signed his checks better than he could. 30 years on the job taught me one thing. Kid, he said, tightening a screw. Paper never lies. People do. I came within one breath of telling him everything. The sentence was in my mouth. Something is happening with my accounts. But I've been the strong one for so long that asking for help feels like undressing in public. Since the divorce, my world has narrowed to Noah, the ICU, and this parking lot. I've gotten used to carrying things alone. So instead, I made a joke about the HOA and went back inside. That afternoon, my phone rang. My mother, bright as bells. You're still holding Wednesday for your birthday, aren't you? We moved it to Wednesday, did I tell you? She said. She hadn't. She talked for more minutes about cake from Ashley's bakery. About Aunt Ruth coming, about having the whole family together again. She had not baked, bought or acknowledged a birthday cake for me in 22 years. Now she was calling twice a week about one. I hung up and told myself again. People soften with age. Sunday night, on a quiet hour in the ICU, I pulled my full credit reports from all 3 bureaus. The break room printer spit out 40 pages. I read them the way I read a crushing patience chart. Fast first, then slow. It wasn't just one Visa. There was a card opened in 2014, another in 2016, a department store card in 2017, a personal loan in. 2019, $12,000, paid off and closed. More cards in 2020 and 2022. 9 accounts total. 12 years of history. None of them mine. Every single one listed the same mailing address. My parents' house. I made a list. Opened when? Balance what? Status where? The dates line themselves up into a shape I didn't want to see. The first card was opened June 2014. I graduated nursing school in June 2014 and moved out that same month. Somebody had waited until I carried my last box out and then opened a door behind me with my name. The personal loan was March 2019. I stared at that date for a very long time. Noah was born. March 15, 2019. I spent that month in a hospital bed at Miami Valley with a blood pressure cuff on my arm and a preeclampsia diagnosis on my chart while I was learning to swaddle my newborn. Someone else was signing my name for $12,000. I pinned that date on a piece of paper and wrote one question under it in red. What else did I sign that month? There were only 2 names that fit every fact. Who had my social security number since birth? Who kept my documents in a grey file? Who controlled the mailbox on Kettering Avenue? Who kept answering that landline? I wrote the names. Mom, Dad. Then I scratched them out. Then wrote them again. My hands were less steady that time. I want that on the record to at work. When the numbers say something you don't want to hear, you don't argue with the monitor. You order more tests. So I didn't call my mother. I put a hard freeze on my credit at all 3 bureaus. Not another alert this time, a freeze. The kind when nothing opens without a pin only I have. Locking a door from the inside for the first time in my life. 2 days later, my phone rang. Leah, my mother said, strained but trying for breezy. Did you do something with your bank? Someone called your father about a verification and it wouldn't go through. That brand new, invisible freeze had inconvenienced her within 48 hours. I asked what bank. She slid right past the question, complaining about idiots in call centers these days. I told her calmly, banks make mistakes all the time. Mom, and hung up. That was the day I stopped being a daughter with a bad feeling and became what I actually am, a professional who documents. I bought a binder and colored tabs. Green for accounts, yellow for dates, red for anything that touched money moving. I taped a timeline inside my closet door where Noah wouldn't see it. 2014 at the top, the present at the bottom. Index cards for every event. I could prove with paper. My rule was simple and ruthless. If I couldn't hold a document that said it happened, it didn't go on the wall. Feelings don't survive cross-examination. Paper does. Then I went down to the county recorder's office. For $2 and my name, the clerk handed me an answer I didn't want. A general durable financial power of attorney, grantor, Leah Townsend attorneys in fact, Frank and Carol Townsend, jointly and severally. Full authority over accounts, loans, and property, signed and notarized March 14, 2019. While I was admitted to the hospital for preeclampsia, on their copy, my signature was looped and confident. A good imitation. 2 witnesses signed below, the notary's assistant, and a second name, in a slanted hand I would have known anywhere. Carl Frank Townsend. My brother had sworn to the state of Ohio that he watched me stand in front of a notary and hand my parents the legal skeleton key to my life on a day when I could not walk to the bathroom without help. 9 days later, an $11,000 truck loan in Carl's name was paid off in one lump sum from my parents' joint account. Best thing I ever did. Getting that loan gone, he'd bragged around that table for years. Now I knew how. I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. I froze, observed, collected. I took photos of the manila folder hidden under the good napkins in my mother's hutch, my forged signature practiced over and over on lined paper. Bank statements with my grandmother's name and my parents' withdrawals. I filed an identity theft report with the FTC. I chose the drop-down that said parent as the thief and had to stand up and walk around the room once before I could click it. I booked an appointment with the Financial Crimes Unit at the Kettering PD. Detective Ray's the woman who took my binder didn't waste my time. She flipped through 12 years of my life in 20 minutes and tapped the one page that wasn't history. A recent asset verification request on my condo. Everything else is what they did, she said. This is what they're doing. Someone is underwriting a home equity loan on your condo. It's scheduled to close Friday morning. My parents had a little bank appointment Friday morning. My mother had said those exact words on the phone. The loan was already frozen internally as fraud. The bank system showed clear to close, but funding had been stopped behind the scenes. Ray's wanted it that way, we let it look alive, she said. On paper, everything goes ahead as planned. Someone will still walk into that office Friday expecting $85,000 against your home. We want to see who. That meant everything. Between now and Friday was still going ahead, to including Wednesday night's birthday dinner, including whatever changing the locks at her apartment was supposed to. Accomplished while I sat at my mother's table smiling over lemon cake. So I played my role. I went to work. I packed Noah's overnight bag for a sleepover at my friend Tess's. I moved every real document out of my little grey firebox into a safe deposit box and filled the firebox with junk mail and blank paper so it weighed exactly the same. On the Tuesday before my birthday, my dad came by my condo with a box of screws for a shelf I'd mentioned months ago. He stood in my doorway, thumbs hooked in his belt, eyes sliding again and again to the new deadbolt and doorbell camera, put in new hardware. He asked, "De casual, locks wear out," I said. He nodded like the doorknob had threatened him personally. There was a flicker in his face then, something like a warning trying to claw its way out. It died on his tongue. He handed me the screws and left. And I knew two things. One, my mother now knew her old key wouldn't work. Two, they need help. A professional. Walt confirmed it that afternoon with a knock on my door and Biscuit at his heel. "Grey sedan's been through the lot again," he said. "Twice this week. Today, the guy got out with a tape measure. Measured your front door and the slider out back. Wrote it down, left. The plates traced back to a locksmith company. Raise, Walt, and I sat around my kitchen table like a very small task was that night. Her plan was simple. I go to my birthday dinner. Noah is safe with Tessa. Walt happens to be on his porch. Ray's team waits in unmarked cars at my complex. The locksmith, hired by my parents, shows up to Riki an apartment he has no legal authority to enter. He tries. The police step in. The paper case stops being history and becomes a crime in progress. The only rule for me: you're not bait, Ray said. You don't warn them. You don't stall them. You don't help them. You are a guest at your own birthday. The only wrong move is to participate. Wednesday came. I kissed Noah goodbye at Tessa's, held him a little too long, then drove to my parents' house in my blue dress, my phone in my purse, and 12 years of evidence off-site. My mother opened the door before I knocked. "There's my birthday girl," she sang, pulling me into a hug that smelled like perfume and lemon frosting. The table was set with the good china. Aunt Ruth arrived with her usual gossip and quiet, sharp eyes. My dad hovered near the grill window, already peeling the label off his first beer. Carl showed up clean and pressed for once, boots traded for sneakers, talking about how well his truck was still running. Dinner went off like one of my mother's productions always did, on time, on script. Roast, carrots, rolls in the cloth-lined basket that only appears for company. My mother conducted the conversation like an orchestra. My father contributed weather. I watched the clock. Somewhere across town, a locksmith was checking his. 2. The moment came between the roast and the cake. The candles were out on the counter. Ruth counting them and joking about whether you need all 34. My mum leaned in toward my dad, voice dropping to what she thinks is her private register, and said the sentence that made everything click. "Since everyone's here, have your son changed the locks at her apartment?" My dad didn't look at her. He didn't look at me. He just gave the smallest nod, touched Carl's shoulder. Carl set his napkin down, stood up, and said, "Gotta take a call about a job estimate. Start the cake without me." He was already spinning his key ring in his hand, heading for his truck and for my condo, for the deadbolt he didn't know about, for the firebox, full of junk. For the doorbell camera, for the detectives in the parking lot who already had my affidavit and the loan file. I sat there and ate my cake, lemon, 3 layers, perfect. My phone buzzed once in my lap. A photo from Ray's, my front door, locksmith van in front of it, a man in a vest talking to 2 plainclothes officers. Caption, "All good, no entry. Enjoy your birthday." When Carl came back through the door an hour later with his face drained of all color, when he bent to my mother's ear and tried to whisper, "Mom." There were police in a room that had already gone dead silent. I didn't say a word. I just watched my father's phone light up with a call from the bank's regional office 2 days earlier than expected. Watched him not answer.